There we are. Okay. Hey, everybody. This is Oakwalker. I am very, very happy to be here and really happy to know that you're here listening as well. It means a lot to us that we have an audience the way we do. Um, we have been talking about performative things about performative and recapitulation, which is a bit of that opening yourself up to the things you don't want to admit about yourself and perhaps letting go of them. Uh, and we were talking just before we started this episode off, and Frank was saying, by the way, hi, Frank.
Hey,
I didn't introduce you.
that's
Um,
all right.
so we kind of decided that it would be a good idea if I told this story about a thing I did. One of the ways that we confronted ourselves, recapitulations about confronting ourselves, growing in authenticity, and becoming less performative. So we're still talking about that issue of being performative or trying to perform from a space that's not your true self. And one of the things that I did when I was going through a lot of this self discovery phase was to, for a couple of weeks, go back through the same shamanic journey over and over again. And in this journey, we would go down and we would basically go from our head downstairs, down deep into the dungeons of our internal house, the house that makes up the little compartments of our psyche, if you will. So we had it looking like a house, and down in the dungeons of this house, these were where all the things that you had tucked away, that you had hidden from yourself for so long. And the exercise was to go through and find the door that scares you the most to open. And it would be related to some kind of incident in your past or a memory or a feeling of guilt or a feeling of powerlessness or something you feel like you could have done better, something that you've been stuffing all your whole life long. And we would go into these places and open the window and shine the light into the room. It's a dark room. You have to open the door, and you can see the light of the door sort of like flood across the floor, but it doesn't really get into the corners yet. So you have to walk into this room not knowing what's in there and then, face off whatever it is. And time after time, a couple of times, there'd be some little monster or something in there, and then you'd have to talk to it and deal with it, send it back to the light or whatever. But honest to God, most of the time, the things that I was most afraid of, by the time I got there and opened the door and shined the light in the room, that the room was now empty. There may have been a pile of ashes or dust in one corner, but the issue was actually dead. And that was really big for me because I've been carrying all of this energy around keeping that door shut, you know, and all of this intense, feelings of inadequacy and guilt all this time when I finally did open that door, there was nothing in there. It was gone. It was a non-issue. And the amount of energy that I got in just being able to go into the world and see it was a tremendous increase because I didn't have to keep holding all those doors closed anymore. It was a real good exercise that brought me closer to understanding uh, the reality of what I was in the world, what I had become in the world and what I hadn't become. That was the big deal, is that I wasn't the asshole that I thought I was half the time. So
You know,
that's
I
my
think that
story.
what I'm hearing from that is that, first of all, let me start off by saying I think authenticity is the most powerful power on the planet. I really do. And it's not and we tend to think of power in terms of conquering or overcoming or dominating or something. It's just nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
Nothing to do. You know, the thing that keeps us separated from our authenticity is repeating the same patterns over and over that disallow us the ability to open ourselves up to being authentic. It
New things.
incorporates
Yeah.
fear, anger, greed, all these little dark rooms like you're talking about, that we hold on to because we're taught to do that. I mean, we
Yeah.
are,
Yeah.
because
Don't show
you're
that.
basic, basically I mean, you go into any school system, well, not any school system, but most school systems are set up so, you're graded on how well you perform. How'd
Yeah.
you perform this semester?
Uh-huh.
You know, and and you get a grade on it, and so there's this like it's like you're trained in a certain way to uh, disavow your authenticity by conforming to the system that you're presented with. And
Hmm.
incorporated in that system are the fears of all the people that have taught you
To
down
be.
through the eons of time.
Hmm.
They're holding on to they're not doing shamanic journeys. They're not going in and looking into their shadows or facing their fears, all this stuff. That's just where's the value in that for them? They don't see it, because for them, power is,
Power
which is
over.
why we have a president right now that is just holding up the biggest mirror to the United States and saying, "Here's what you really look like." Just
Uh-huh.
by
Yeah.
the way, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and he's incorporate the worst of all our aspects,
Hmm.
and he's flaunting it,
Yeah.
and so the rest of the world's going, "Oh man, that's woohoo!"
Yeah, that's nice
But
to know.
I mean, and people that and like ourselves that are valuing authenticity, we look at them and just go, "Oh Christ Almighty!" That is just, I mean, it's just putrid. It really is.
Yeah.
It's just putrid, and and then you go on there, and there's people that have like bought into this. It's it's a huge wake up call. I mean,
It is.
it probably the biggest that this country's ever encountered, and it's forcing
Well,
people to start looking at themselves in ways that they've never really thought
yeah,
was necessary.
right. And we
I mean,
have to now, people are starting to wonder what it is. Why have I been taught to value these things? This
right,
isn't working. The things that I have
right,
been taught to value, the wealth and the power and the egocentric uh what's that corporate ladder, you know,
right.
going up the ladder and all that stuff and gaining in what they call success. It's not success, and it isn't. And being successful in that way, it is making people sick, and
Right.
it's socially completely non-functional. I think I made a posting the other day that says if greed wins, humanity goes extinct. Here's your choice. It is completely non-functional. And when something is that non-functional and gets to have this much power over us, it's only a matter of time before we have to come to terms with ourselves, and it gets back to authenticity again. I can't live that way. I just can't do that. I can't stand around and watch my neighbors deported for nothing. I can't do this. I can't watch. I can't be silent anymore.
Well, I think too that just look at it from the Northwest Wheel standpoint. You look at forgiveness,
Oh yeah.
compassion, mercy, grace,
Hmm.
and love. And so these are qualities that I think people took for granted um, as being something that they just were entitled to, and they didn't really look at it in terms of how is this something that benefits themselves? They don't really, because that they're not authentic and they don't understand what authenticity is. But I think, it's flipping people into where they're starting to have questions and doubts about themselves. And so for anybody to give something up, there's got to be something that they're wanting to replace it with.
Hmm.
And I think these all these tapes and these that we've been making is we're trying to put some stuff out on the table that says, look, here's something you can replace it with that is really valuable,
Yeah,
and it's personally rewarding, not only to you but the people that you care about, because you're valuable to them through being authentic. You're not valuable to them because you perform in a certain way.
right.
There's nobody that says, boy, my dad's a great corporate CEO. Do you know that? You know, wow, what a guy. He's never around, but what the
Yeah,
hell,
right.
you know? So I mean, it's real easy to get down about what's going on in this country right now, but I think we just you have to look at it in terms of this thing is playing itself out probably in ways that are beneficial that we can't even wrap our head around. I mean,
Yeah.
through our work with our spirit council, they've just said, just chill out,
Hmm.
let it go, let it
Yeah.
let it unfold,
Yeah, it is
and
because it is unfolding. And I didn't mean to be a Debbie Downer in there, but the point I'm trying to make is that you people aren't happy with the way things are, and it's going to a shift is essential. It's necessary to happen, and I think I see it happening. So I really actually have a lot of hope, even
no,
though
I agree with you 100%. Yeah,
uh-huh,
I think, people are more and more coming out, and particularly young people, I think that they're saying this, look, this is just not a world that we want to inherit. This is not a world
hmm,
this we don't want to play in this,
yeah,
and I saw a really good quote on by this guy that was talking about um, men. He's a real advocate for young men, particularly, and he says, that so only like 40% of the men feel economically able to get married and have a family, and that's a horrible ratio, in terms of
yeah,
percentages of the population. And and a big reason for that is because the women are looking for people that are going to take care of them, that are economically feasible. Well, when you have an economy that's crashing all around you, those numbers get worse and worse,
yeah,
and so so what's the alternative? To sit around and wait for the economy to get better, or to move over towards authenticity,
uh-huh,
and saying, look, let's explore this. And the important part of this, and I don't know, I wish I could come up with the right words to really enforce this. The more authentic you are, the more the universe plays with you. It merges with you, it works with you. There are millions of spirit guides and allies and
hmm,
angels and nature spirits out there ready to go to work, that have been waiting for this wake up call,
uh-huh,
and all you need to do is say, I'm going to be authentic. I'm going to be an authentic person,
yep,
and they will show up, because
uh-huh.
but if you take this attitude of it's all about me and how great I am, they're not going to show up.
Well,
I mean, it's that
you can't
simple.
see them under those circumstances, and that's the thing, is that your truth, inner truth, is that very key to become the co-creator of your own life. And you can't
Exactly.
do it by faking. You're not. It's not the kind of a thing you can fake until you make it, right? Because fake is fake. But
No,
just don't.
you're absolutely right. And spirit wants nothing to do with that.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
it
you're
really
cutting
isn't. I mean,
yourself off from even being able to have contact with them if you just like spending all your time. Just see, once you stop transmitting this facade, then you can shut up and listen when you can
right.
listen. then you have this whole plethora of helpers who are waiting for you to get told stuff.
And they reside in the natural world.
Yeah, and they
That's where
reside
they
in the
reside.
natural
And
world.
that's exactly where they are. And so, if you're, if you open up those possibilities, the world takes on a dynamic that is far more, it's a much greater movie than anything that we've seen on this planet in the last 2,000
Yeah.
years. I mean, it really is. It take once I mean, and there, I mean, without a doubt, I think we're getting set up for contact with ETs. I mean, it's in the news almost every day now. There's
You
something
mean
about it.
common
And
contact with ETs? Yeah.
yeah, and so, they've been around forever. But I think that we're moving towards that time when they're going to come in and they're going to bring gifts and
Hmm.
knowledge and knowing of
Yeah.
capabilities that will solve a lot of the issues that we've been struggling with around here because we've been fake.
Yeah.
We've been performing.
Yeah.
And it's just the if everybody starts trying to just simply have the intention, express the intention to walk in beauty and be your authentic self. Just those two phrases, man. Just those two
Hmm.
phrases. I want to walk in beauty and I want to be my authentic self will change dramatically. Don't you
Right.
agree?
Oh, I do. Absolutely. And I think that's the key to just about every tradition that there is out there has
Right.
has the premise in it that you need to do this on a moment by moment basis, right? You
Right.
walk in the spirit, every step you take is in the Holy Spirit or in the spirit of whoever you're doing, whatever you're doing, right? But you have to walk in within the consciousness of God, if you will, And I think that it's really interesting because the weird part is that you have to really work very hard to believe that you're not already part of the creator. You've got to set up this
Absolutely.
you've got to set up this myth, this
Right.
mythology that makes you feel like you're not part of the creator already. And that's the part of authenticity that I'm breaking down is those myths that got me to feeling like I was either better than God or so bad that God didn't want to have anything to do with me. And neither of those two things are true.
You know, Performing is hard because of the fact that the performance is never good enough.
Right. You're not getting the applause you're looking for.
There's nobody's throwing money on the stage. Yeah,
Right.
it's that's the dichotomy of the situation here is so ironic is that authenticity is difficult only because it sets you aside from what most other people are doing, and
Mhm.
you have to get to a point. I had the conversation with Colleen, she said, I made a comment one time. So I had to have a conversation with me. She says, you better get to a point where you really enjoy being with yourself because you're going to have a lot of that around. He said, yeah, I remember having that conversation, and it's true. It was like you get to where the point where a lot of people just they see being alone as being like a indication of failure,
Yeah.
and so they get down on themselves and then they get real lonely and then that just compounds, but the person who's authentic, he's not the person's never alone. There's never any doubt or fear or complications with being with yourself, because you're authentic. I mean, and
Mhm.
so if you're performing and no one's watching, you're screwed.
Yep, you got
You
nothing.
know, you got nothing, and there's nowhere to go with it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it turns into a very dark, deep, depressing place, man.
Hmm.
And so the alternative, which we're trying to expose here, is to allow yourself to be connected into the spirit of everything around you and the consciousness of everything around you,
Yeah.
which can be just as, and it's simple that just like you and I did recently, where we just went and sat with the tree, this grandmother
Yeah.
tree on my property, and just allow, sit there and be quiet and listen. Just be
Yes.
quiet and listen next to a tree, and you'll hear, man. You'll be taught. You'll learn stuff,
Hmm.
and you'll know that you're not alone, and you'll know you've got support. I mean, it's that simple,
Yeah.
And instead of, people sit at home and, you know what, I'm going to get out the vodka bottle because I feel like shit.
I've done that
Well,
before.
that's a fun time. And invite some friends over. I'm sure they'd love to be with you. So, I think I mean, I've grown to a place where I value myself, my authenticity to such a degree that I don't mind being with it, just being with
Yeah.
it, and
It's endlessly
it doesn't.
entertaining. There's always something going on.
Absolutely. Even like like I said, when we I started going through recapitulation and started looking at boy, the different parts of my life and where, things had happened that I couldn't quite understand. And then I realized, oh my God, it just because you weren't performing the way they wanted you to. And it just went, oh,
Uh-huh.
wow. I mean, and now it's like, oh, well, okay, well, that makes a difference. And so I wasn't hung up on it any longer. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
I pretty much let go of all that stuff anyway, but it just gave it another, it's like another layer was let loose,
Yeah.
you know? And I could go, okay, well, I now see where they were coming from, and where I was coming from, or where my confusion was. I mean, yeah, once you start clearing up confusion, man, things start really lightening up.
Yep. And clarity happens. It's,
Well, how
you
does that
know,
look for you? That's a good term right there to talk about. What does clarity mean to you?
oh, let's save that for the next one. We're at 25 minutes already. So,
Okay.
okay. So clarity, that's interesting. And so let's lead into this for the next episode because I'm reminded of this person that I was living with, really one of my dearest friends, helped me raise my children. Um, and she actually went on an antidepressant, and I was like, no, no, don't do that. You can't get off of those. But she did, and it worked for her because she said, I never knew that this is what happiness felt like. I didn't have any example. And that's why they worked for her. And of course, they were still hard to get off of. And, there's a lot of ups and downs around all of that. But it worked for her because her eyes were opened, right? And that's what
Mm.
happens with clarity. Because the first time I saw clarity, I was like, oh my God, what is that? It's like
Wow.
everything just
Yeah.
turned into a crystal clear thing. And there's a Bible verse about that where the scales fall off your eyes and you were once before you saw through a glass darkly and you know and that's that connection. Once that connection happens with the natural world and with the creator spirit, um, then that allows for this clarity to all come forward. Some people have to do it with plant
Tw-
medicine.
the twisted hairs have a term for that called a crystalline matrix.
Oh, I like that. That's a nice one.
Yeah. Isn't that great?
Hmm.
And it's like when you see how everything is in harmony and in balance, you can't help but not become a part of that, and
Uh-huh.
it's almost like, and it's like you're God, I'm home.
Oh,
There's
this is
home,
beautiful. So, okay,
and
yeah, go ahead.
go ahead. No,
Well,
I was it. I mean, I just,
yeah, I'm looking at you.
no, yeah, no, I just, the crystalline matrix is what is what occurs through and becomes what I define as clarity when you see how everything works in harmony with one another. You know,
Mhm.
how all the different worlds are in service to each other through knowing,
Uh-huh.
you
Yeah.
know, and so they're all there in service of the creator, and all of that consciousness comes together in one big huge clump, you know, that creates that opens up in this to this bright, shiny, clear awareness that, man, this is something awesome, you know,
Yeah.
and if there's something I can do to help bring this to other people, I'm on all the way. I'm in. And that's really what happened to me. You know, when
Hmm.
I went into what I later call the I am, you
Yeah.
know, where I was part of that perfection.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, I'm in. I'm all in on this. Somehow this has got to happen here.
Okay, so that's excellent. So this is what here's what let's do. I'm having an idea. Light bulb. Um, let's spend the next days between this episode and the next one and think about things that we did that led us to this illumination of clarity, because this is a really important topic in my opinion, and we can really expand on this. And I think I'm going to need to like dig down into my past a little bit and go, oh yeah, I remember that now, and I remember that now, and I want the dream warriors to come and like coach me a little bit on this too, so I'm going to have to sleep on it at least a couple nights. And
Cool.
let's come back to this again,
This
shall we?
this is another valuable asset of authenticity. We can go to sleep and learn stuff,
Right.
and it don't cost anything.
I know, right? I guess I don't know if I told you about my last stream, but anyway, we'll get to that. Maybe I'll put it in our next episode. Last
All right.
dream. And I'm going to thank our beloved listeners, and I'm going to thank you, sir, for joining me on these talks. They get so animated and fun. And I would like to send blessings to everybody out there who happens to be still listening. And I thank you. And don't forget that you can come and visit us on our webpage at earth-ems.org. So come and see us, and thank you all very, very much.